Hey, how are you guys doing today? So today I want to talk to you about something really cool. I'm going to talk about how this potato becomes these potato chips. All right, so it's something pretty cool, I think. It came about from a guy named George Crumb. He started out making French fries with at his diner, and his French fries was really thick, and people were complaining that they were too thick. So he started to cut them really, really thin, like paper thin slices, and fry them to a crisp. And people actually started really favoring them and loving them and ordering them more than anything on his menu. And more restaurants started adapting that. Well, in the 1900s, the chips had become so popular that people started manufacturing it in a factory. And something cool about it is I actually got to work at a potato chip factory. That was my first manufacturing job, and it was really cool to watch the process from start to finish. And it's really cool that I get to share that with you guys. Um, so I'm going to talk to you about how we started out. When the manager would order a potato truck and an 18 wheeler would pull in, we would go out there and a guy with a forklift or a girl or whoever was driving the forklift, they would come in with what was look like a bucket and it would like scoop up the potatoes, and whatever like was left on the sides, somebody would come in and like with a plastic shovel and they would scoop with it and push them to the middle so that they could scoop up the rest of the potatoes. Those potatoes then would go to a wooden crate and it would be pushed to the side until they were ready to be processed. And then when the processing would start, the potatoes would be taken to a station where they would be dropped into some water and they would kind of rotate onto some rollers like this, and the potatoes would like wash off all the dirt and the excess stuff on it, and it would go then to a process where it's looked at, checked out, made sure everything's good, and if it's good enough to pass through everything through that, it goes through where it goes, like, again, it kind of rotates, but it takes off like the top layer of the potato, so then all you're left with is like a skinned potato, and it goes down to the next step, which is the slicer, and it's gonna go up there and you put it up, the potatoes goes up to this thing and it goes up one by one and it will drop and it will slice it. It's like a mechanical slicer, so it's gonna go on it. Then it will lay the chips down into like what's considered like a bowl that catches the chips. So then they set aside for the fryers, and anything that's cut that day needs to be fried that day because potatoes that's been cut, it would be discolored and everything, and then your chips wouldn't be up to best quality. So the chips then would be put to the side and wait for the fryers. So those fryers are really, really big. They could hold like 100 to 500 pounds of oil. And that's a lot of oil. I don't know if you think about it, but that's quite a bit. And to put it in retrospect, they were able to walk from one side of the fryer to the next side of the fryer just to make sure the chips were steered. They would come out there like this, and they would steer it all the way up and down while the chips were frying. And when the chips would be done, they would check it regularly, making sure like it wasn't done. They would push the button, they'd have hit the timer, and the chips would come up, and they would push it up with a paddle, like it was like a paddle wooden spoon like thing that they would push it up with, and it would come up with a conveyor belt. And it would come into this machine and it would start to fall down, and as the chips was falling down onto the belt, the salt was falling down as well, so it would evenly salt the chips as it was falling, so it was like making sure that the chips got just enough amount of salt and flavoring on it. Then, after the chips had came down from that, it was come down on the conveyor belt like this, and it would fall down onto what's called a shaker table. And the shaker table goes extremely slow, but it vibrates the chips down from one side to the next. And in between that process, not only was it like spreading them all out and everything, then you had like 6 inspectors just in that short run to be able to make sure that you had quality chips going through there. They were looking for anything that was like undercooked potatoes, over salted potatoes, maybe potato chips that stuck together and didn't cook right, potato chips that were stuck together and just didn't do what they were supposed to. Either or, they had to be all removed so that way only quality chips was being packed. And after that, the chips would come up another conveyor belt, and it was like this, and it would come like this, and the chips would fall right on top of those and they would move it up, and the same thing would happen. And what happened was when it would go all the way up to the top, it would go to another shaker table that would knock it into the chip packaging machine. And it would go down into like how much it was weighed. So like how this one right here says it's 7.75 ounces. So say this was being packed right now, the chip would be right here. And this bag would be obviously open and never sealed, and the chips would fall down in here, and as soon as it hit that weight, it would shut off where no more chips could come through, and it will seal this bag off, so that way this bag is now ready for production. So then they go ahead and they put it in boxes and they send it out to our consumers. Isn't that so awesome? But anyway, I thought that would be really cool to show you guys and to share with you how this became this. Our delicious, lovely snack that we know as potato chips.